at its heart levels is a love story. It's basically Joe and Ash are two people that find each other, and they fall in love. And the complicating factor to that is the question of whether they actually, exist in the same reality or not, and then what happens following that. And there's some trauma involved right out of the gate, where Joe believes that Ash has been killed in front of him, which sends him into a spiral, and then sends him on this sort of voyage to find out what's happened, and some very unexpected twists and turns. So again, at its heart, though, it's a story about people that find each other, and how important it is in the world of levels, but also in our world today, that to find one another, to find those connections, those human connections, those physical connections, regardless of where you come from and who you are.
Well, it's kind of interesting if there are different realities involved. Cara, your character, tell us about her. She's who is she, and how is it? What reality is she in? What's going
I
on?
mean, let me tell you, it's crazy that I made the poster for this movie because I get shot like 5 minutes in. I don't even know. Like it's wild
Yeah, it's
that
weird,
I'm
right? That's a bit
here
of a red
doing
herring.
interviews about it. Yeah, it's so crazy. Um, but thrilled to be here. I play Ash, and she's in love with Joe, played by the remarkable Peter Mooney, and and they're in love, and without being too spoilery about the whole thing, the film really takes off when a great big huge question about what reality we are occupying arises. And there may or may not be a digital universe involved.
Okay, well, all right. Peter's character, uh, your character does not have a secret, right? I mean, he's
No,
secret. He does, and he does not. Can you? Is that where we start?
that's right. So Joe is kind of discovering the world of this film as the audience is. Joe is living in a city, running a bookstore, living a pretty regular life. He loves reading his books, loves his very cool apartment that we were just talking about earlier. Happy, simple life. And then one day, this woman, Ash, walks into his bookstore and kind of upends it all. They have an instant connection and they fall in love. Ash, like Cara was saying, 5 minutes into the movie, is murdered in front of him, and we lose her. But then the whole movie is about how they find their way back to each other and how their love leads them to sort of cross this unbridgeable divide, cross this reality that they are actually in different worlds.
Okay, but when they first hit it off, they
Hmm.
are in one reality, and
Hmm.
Kara is about to tell Peter that I'm really not from here.
Hmm.
And that's when we lose her. So, what was she working up to?
Well, she was about to tell him the fact that he is living in a simulation. She is from the real world, and has been visiting him here in this world. Personally, I think it's kind of lucky that she gets murdered when she does, because that would be a really hard thing to believe.
Oh my God, imagine saying that to me right now.
I don't mean to hurt your
Imagine.
feelings. It's just,
Audacity.
I don't know that he would have been
Lucky
able to
you,
understand
Joe.
it without her sort of, posthumous efforts to reach across this divide and reach out to him. Because it is a lot, Joe, for him, is having to face this idea that his world, as he understands it, is not real in the way he's understood real to be his whole life, but that the thing that is real and the reality that they can both exist in is how they feel for each other.
Well, what with the AI advancing so quickly, how unoutlandish is this concept?
I mean, Adam, you can speak to this better than us. You wrote it. This is a concept from your brain, but I think what was pretty, speculative science fiction when we wrote it is careening towards, or when we shot it in March of last year, is like careening towards a very possible near future reality. So I think the kind of sort of thought experiments that we're doing in this film, I think are about to become real world things for us all.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That's exactly right. It's always interesting when you're trying to write or create a science fiction story that is somewhat near future or extrapolating from current day events. You better watch out with how quickly things can catch up to you. I've experienced this several times now, and certainly on this film, we were nowhere near this potential existential AI overall concern than compared to where we are now. It's just a different world. It's quite fascinating how quickly things have caught up. And you're right, it's not so outlandish anymore. It's probably around the corner.
Yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just getting a quick text from my AI girlfriend, and she gets really back right away. So she's great. You guys are gonna love her.
So this to go on with the story that we have a villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain, Adam, how Cara gets shot? So who shoots her? What's going on? How does Joe figure out what's going on, or does he?
Sure. Well, I should certainly leave, some of that to, to spoiler territory. But our villain of the story is played by the marvelous Aaron Abrams. It's Hunter, and interestingly enough, the character of Hunter, in some respects, and I remember talking about this when we were shooting the film. Aside from sort of some sociopathic tendencies, I certainly relate to a lot of the drivers that he's going through in the film, which is this world is a mess. I have an opportunity to fix it. And now it's slightly a narcissistic view of the world, but I have an opportunity to fix it. So I'm going to take it. And because no one else is going to. And frankly, I look back to a few years ago, and if any of us were given the ability, at least in our heads, to be able to change the world for the better, I think we'd have to think pretty long and hard before not moving forward with that, because there's just so much crazy out there. No matter where you live or what your experiences are, it feels like we are headlong into the storm of an inflection point, or maybe we've already passed it, that will affect all of us on this planet. So Hunter's a guy that's like, I'm going to fix that. And there's a lot of ego involved in that, but maybe that's what it takes. So I don't want to spoil anything further than that, but Hunter, yes, shoots Ash, and then moves on along on his business. And that brings up a lot of questions as to the value of digital versus analog, of if you're created in this way, do you have more or less value than someone that's created in another way? All of those kinds of questions. And I don't want to spoil too much more, but yeah.
Well, what is your personal vision of the future? What do you think is? I mean, you thought this up,
Yeah.
and
I'd like to. I always have considered myself an optimist for most of my life, and I was saying earlier that my science fiction growing up was Star Trek. I believe in this idea that if we can just get through the nuts, there might be a great world on the other side for all of us. If we can all learn that there's no them, there's just us. And I think that's what I loved about the optimism of that kind of science fiction. right now, I can't say I'm feeling as optimistic as that anymore. I'd love to be able to, and I'm still trying to look through the forest, but it's a scary world out there. And I think a lot of us, it doesn't take a lot to look around and go, I don't know what's going to happen. And I have no idea anymore. I'd like to think that things are going to improve on all fronts, but I honestly don't know the answer. And I worry that dystopia is around the corner because we're driving out all of the ways we can express ourselves potentially with AI. And that scares the hell out of me. It really does. Yeah.
How close are we to finding a true love in an AI in an AI being?
That's a great question. Probably pretty close. I guess it's how you define true love. Well, I think what this film is about in many respects is how do you define anything, and do definitions matter? I think if someone is in love with an AI creation, who's to judge the value of that compared to being in love with another human? I don't know the answer to that, and I think we're right around the corner from that, if we're not already there. Frankly, with some of the experiments with some of the AI companies with voice assistants that are becoming more than voice assistants. So, we're pretty close to that, I think, if not already there.
In your film, the two main characters are relating in one reality, so they're physically in the same reality, right? I'm assuming that they've touched each other.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, do you think we will be able to touch?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it will start just like, you're seeing the tech companies these days, Apple, the Vision Pro, and all of these kinds of devices that you can see the world around you in a different way. There's technology out there right now that allows us to walk in those worlds and feel things with haptic sensors and all of these. Those are all just going to continue to be developed. And yes, I think maybe that's more than a few years down the line, all told, to be fully immersed in that sort of Ready Player One style of, being able to be there. But I think we're closer than we think. Yeah, I think not more than a few years.
Um, how would you react if you had an AI human, an AI man come on to you and he's the perfect person? What would you do with him? He's the ideal man. Would you take it for a test run?
I mean, no, I don't know. I mean, I can in another world where I'm a single woman. I mean, why not? Why not?
Exactly. Peter, what do you think?
I mean, that's the other thing is it's so I'm married and happy and I have a beautiful little child and those interactions are so key to my life. But also, I mean, there's an epidemic of loneliness around the world right now. So, but for my current circumstances, it's very hard to say. I think if there is something that gives people a feeling of connection and is a way to find love, then I think it's great. But if it's something that further divides us and is giving us an illusion as opposed to actual connectivity, then less so. I mean, I think there are two paths that diverge here, sort of a more optimistic version and a pretty scary version of just a bunch of isolated, angry narcissists with, whatever we want reflected back at us. That, seeing how technology often goes, that might be a more likely outcome. But I think in all of this, there are opportunities for actual kind of beautiful connection.
So is that a yes?
She says yes. She says yes. She says yes.
Well, I think a lot about the film Her, right? Like that's exploring
yes, exactly. Yeah,
and it's a great. I mean, as you were implying with your film, but I think that's a really astute point. It's it could go one of two ways, and hopefully, hopefully it will go the better way, in that it will provide connection for people as opposed to providing just yet another source of manipulation and disinformation.
Okay,
yeah.
so guys, though, here's the thing. If it's an AI creation in one way or another, you're paying for it, right? Like you've bought the computer, you're paying for Wi-Fi. So that relationship's going to be inherently transactional.
That's a great point.
So that's a very different thing. That's a very different thing. I mean, there's obviously that aspect to, real life human relationships as well, but that's unavoidable with an AI fling, right? So I wonder about that. That's just something to remember, right? Like how true can it be if you're paying for it?
Yeah, it's indentureship.
I think also people are idiosyncratic and we reflect different things in each other, and human relationships are difficult. And my fear is that human AI relationships could be easier, and an algorithm could just learn whatever we want to hear, whatever we want to see, and cater that to us. And it'll actually weaken our ability to relate to each other IRL on a human to human level, while we just look for easier, sort of more dopamine inducing relationships.